Well, hello everyone and welcome to Painless Universal, conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we'll be talking to a speaker, businessman, entrepreneur, author about improving the quality of human lives across the world. How do we get better? How do we fight improve our immunity so we can fight diseases better? People don't fail diet. This is quote, diet fails people. What does he mean by that? We'll also be talking about his Wide Fit transformation program. How does this work and how can this better our lives? Let me give you a little bit of background about my guest, Eric Edmeades. He's the founder of Wide Fit Transformation. He's a compelling speaker, an entrepreneur, having owned companies in 4 countries, including those in mobile computing, military research and development, 3D camera engineering, and Hollywood special effects, where he worked James Cameron's smash hit Edmeades and movies in the Transformer, Iron Man, and Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Today, he's regarded as one of the most entertaining, compelling, and transformational speakers in the world. His programs are some of the highest rated in the industry, and his flagship health coaching program, Wide Fit, has been the highest rating program on the Mind Valley platform for 2 years. Eric's family immigrated to Canada from South Africa when he was just a child. At 15 years old, this is fascinating, guys, he was homeless on the street, but he turned his life around and he enjoyed significant personal and business success since. Today, he's a recognized international business speaker and has spoken in over 25 countries. He shared the stage with Tony Robinson, President Bill Clinton, Sir Richard Branson, and Jack Canfield. In 2008, he was awarded the medal by the Canadian Senator for his health efforts in helping people improve the quality of their lives. He now lives in the Caribbean and enjoys kiteboarding and spending time with his family. Please join me as we welcome Eric to discuss all things diets, eating healthy, the importance of having a great immunity. Meet my wonderful guest, Eric. Well, hello everyone and welcome again to Painless Universal, conversation with myself and Welsh. It's so important we talk about diet because a lot of people, especially when you live in the Western world, that's something that's constantly on our mind. The pandemic has asked us questions about our immunity, what does the food we eat and how does that help us? My guest today, as I said in my intro, he's an entrepreneur, businessman, speaker, and an author. And he'll be telling us about improving the quality of human lives across the world. How is he doing that? Most importantly, I want to ask, people don't fail diet fail people. What does that truly mean? Eric, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm really, I'm great. And thanks for having me.
I'm really great that you came on. And where are you joining me from? I'm out here in the United Kingdom, London. And you?
I am in Cabarete on the north coast of the Dominican Republic.
Well, enjoy that. Eric, I know I reached out to you because of your phenomenal work you do with the Wide Fit. And I read about the program because I wanted my girlfriends to understand what exactly you do and how this program could help anyone out there to really understand what food is all about. But before we get into all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who are you?
I was a South African-born immigrant to Canada as a small child. Went through my unremarkable upbringing. The normal stuff, divorces and whatever. And there came a point in my life where I just got tired of suffering. Like I was consistently, continuously sick. And I don't mean terminal. I wasn't applying to the Make-A-Wish Foundation or something. When I say sick, I want to be real. What I mean is that I had consistent, terrible allergies, digestive problems, headaches, cystic acne. I was just that guy who was always sick. And I finally one day was having a big discussion with my doctor, and they wanted me to have a surgery, and they gave me all these drugs, and nothing was working. And one day I was inspired by some friends to revisit my relationship with food and the way I looked at food and what have you. And that began the journey that led to where I am today. I experimented with food for about, made some changes for about 30 days. And within a month, I had lost 35 pounds, which is what, like 2 stone. All of my symptoms were gone. And I suddenly became this vibrant, energetic, athletic person for the first time in my life. And that itself stimulated a lot of curiosity in me. But then the next thing was that I spoke with one of my doctors and asked, I was an impetuous kid, but I just asked, how long it takes to go to medical school. And it was 6 years in his case. And then I said, and in those 6 years, how much of that time did you spend studying nutrition and food? I expected him to tell me sometime, but it was none. It was literally none. Like, and that struck me as terrifying. Terrifying that somebody could become a doctor and not study food. To me, that's like you're going to become a mechanic and you never study gas or oil, antifreeze or water, washer fluid. Like, it's such a ridiculous notion. But those events set me up to say, well, it's like, if they're not going to do this, I'm going to figure it out. And so I undertook a really impassioned journey of research and discovery and adventures to try to get to the bottom of A, really, what are we supposed to be eating? And B, why is it that people won't do that even when they know? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what led me to creating WildFit. In the background, I'm an entrepreneur. I started my first business in the mobile tech business in the UK, where you are. I started a wireless networking company out in Bristol, lived there for 9 years, sold that business. And then I got involved in, I bought a film studio in Northern California. We worked on major movies like Avatar and Pirates of the Caribbean, really fun stuff. And then I got involved in military research and development and high fidelity medical simulation for the US Army. Mm. And then all of that one day led me to a place where I was like, what I really want to do is give back to the world the big gifts I've given myself. And one of those gifts was my health.
Eric, when I look at your life, one of the key things that stands out for me, you said you were homeless at 15. Did being homeless at 15, did that help shape you in any way?
Of course it did. It really did. I think one thing that's missing from many of our cultures in the world these days is what we might call the rite of passage. And, I spent a lot of time with a Jewish family that I basically sort of became an adoptive member of their family for many years. And they were just the sweetest people to me. And I watched their children go through their bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah processes. And I thought to myself, wow, kids that don't get to do stuff like this are really missing out on something. And I was very lucky in my life that I did get to go through things like that, not structured, not because my religion called for it or because my parents structured it, but because life made it happen to me. And one of those was making the decision to leave the school that I was enrolled in, which was a boarding school that my father had enrolled me in, to leave it because there were things that were not right at that school, and to then face the reality of my father not allowing me to move back home and becoming homeless, and not giving in to all that, like facing it and dealing with having to make sure that I had food and all that kind of stuff. And it was a very serious moment in my life where it's like, well, I'm the only one responsible for me. There's nobody, I can't rely on somebody else. There's no, what am I going to do? And so, yeah, I would say that period of time played a big role in my, in my development of independence.
Yes, no, absolutely. I like what you said about what your upbringing, because that has shaped you in so many ways, because you've gone through so much different phases of your life. You were born in South Africa, raised in Canada, and then you got your first real job, you've worked in the United Kingdom. Then you started this journey of personal health transformation. And I mean, when I look at this sequence of your life, I'm like, wow, this is someone who's really gone through so much of life. In all of this sequence of life and living in different countries as well, what lessons did you learn about food and the way we eat? Because I always say to people, one of the things I've learned about food and dieting is that the Western world really emphasize so much about food. They emphasize so much about dieting, probably because they have too much of it. But in the African world, African continent where I come from, and you two as well come from, there was that thing about dieting, but not the way it is so stressed out here. So in your journey of life, what have you learned about food?
I mean, many things, but one really striking thing that I noticed is that when I first moved to the United Kingdom, I came from Canada, and I was 26 years old, I suppose. And I arrived in the United Kingdom, and generally I noticed that the United Kingdom was, let's say, healthier than what I was used to seeing, like with respect to things like body weight. The obesity and that sort of stuff was not so prolific in the UK when I got there. But I was there for 10 years, and I watched the country double in size. And I'm not obviously talking about the number of people, I'm talking about the size of the people. I watched it happen. But you know what I watched happen was, KFC and TGI Fridays and all these American chains coming across. And I watched that happen and watched the impact that it had on the population. And I do think sometimes perspective is very important. So the fast food dilemma of America happened in America quite slowly, really. You can date it back maybe to the 50s when drive-throughs like A&W and McDonald's and that sort of stuff started happening. But it took a long time for it to start to devastate the health of the nation. And so as a consequence, no one generation was able to witness the devastation that was being, foisted upon them. You didn't really notice it. Like, the generations of the 50s started getting a little bigger, then, a little bigger, then in the 70s, a little bigger. And by the time you got to the 80s, you got to the place where the average person is overweight. You're talking about a pandemic level of obesity now existing in North America. But the difference was in Britain, it happened in 10 years. I watched it happen. You went from, being in a place where the average person at most was a little bit overweight to it was absolutely routine to see somebody who was tragically obese walking down the street. And that really showed me that that these changes that we're dealing with, largely influenced by convenience. And we can blame America all we like, but it's not America's fault. They're just the first ones to discover convenience is a great way to market food. And then that convenience model has been spreading everywhere. And by the way, Africa has been spared some of that, but not all of it. And it's on the way. It's on the way in a very big way there. India is devastated by the whole thing. And so I think that we can learn a great deal about how our food production systems and our food legislation systems have been destroyed by watching the way it's happened in each country.
That is really true, because it's not something I've quite observed, but I've noticed it, different insights, but it's nice when you're really into the food and market and you understand the changes that's happening. I have to go to your program because I think that program is really phenomenal. I'm not even sure how long that took you to create or make this program for others to help out people. This is a health transformation program. When anyone watching this right now would want to know, okay, this program does this. What is the program? What is it?
I really appreciate you asking me like that, but let me take another angle on this for you. Yeah. I often get on to, media interviews or podcasts or what have you. And then people always ask me, well, Eric, then what should I eat? Because you see, the diet industry is made up of a bunch of people discovering a small truth and foisting that truth upon people with a bunch of difficult rules. So the average diet, you turn to page 1 and it says, this is what you have to do.
Yes.
This is it. These are the rules. And what that represents is an incredibly harsh transformation of somebody's lifestyle, which is why they only can talk about it being a diet, a temporary change, because there's no way you could live like that. You couldn't live like that. The rules are too strict or what have you. So what happened in my case is that when I went through my initial transformation, I obviously had a bunch of friends come up to me and be like, holy crap, what did you do? How did you do that? How do I do it? And there's one friend in particular that basically is responsible for the creation of WildFit. He doesn't know that, but he came to me and he was very overweight. And then he applied the changes because he basically did the same sort of experimentation that I did. And he lost about 30 pounds, which was a big deal for him, but a long way still to go. And then he put it all back. He put it all back on and more. And I looked at him, I go, what's going on? Dude, you already know, you know all the details, you know what to do. And then I would meet other people that also, and I'd tell them what to do and they wouldn't do it, or they do it for a short time. And that really frustrated me. So I actually stopped. People would ask me and I'm like, you don't want to know. Like you say you want to know, but the truth is I'm going to tell you, you're not going to do it because nobody does. And I didn't even want to help people anymore. Then something changed. I started teaching business. In fact, Tony Robbins invited me to come and teach business at his workshops. And so I started teaching business all around the world. And then I started getting engaged to do business lecturing and courses. And then my clients would always ask me, like, what's the number one tip you have for an entrepreneur starting your business? And I would say, well, the number one tip is to be as healthy as possible. You think the number one tip is going to be to get great Facebook advertising or great SEO or hire the right people or systemize and proceduralize. And yeah, all those things are valid. But the number one tip in becoming truly successful in business, or as a father or a mother, or as a student, or as anything that you want to do with your body, is to be healthy. And so I started doing small lectures on food for my business clients, because business clients are typically fairly disciplined people. You know, they've overcome, many times they've overcome things like procrastination, they get stuff done. So I thought, I'll do this, but still most of them would just try it and not. And that's when one day I just took a look and said, why are they not doing what they know to do? You know, there's an old Chinese expression, to know and not to do is not to know. In other words, I'm telling them, they still don't know. Yeah. And that's when 10 years ago, I sat down and worked out what we really now call behavioral change dynamics, a structure for designing, for experience design, for learning design, that creates a very clear way of embedding transformation for people. So the reason that I say people don't fail diets, diets fail people, is because people do what they're told until their willpower runs out, and that's not their fault. That's how willpower is supposed to work. Willpower is not meant to be a long-term tensing. Willpower is meant to be more like a rudder that you use to turn the boat. The challenge is that most diets are built around the use of willpower, and willpower is not a long-term tool. It's not, you can't use willpower to control your behavior for months at a time. Willpower is more like a rudder that you stick in the water to turn the boat, and then you don't need the willpower anymore. And so what we did is developed a program that would allow people to use willpower in the right moments, in the right moment, to adjust their course and change their health trajectory. So they never had to go on a diet again. So they simply changed their relationship with food. Look, I'll tell you this. If somebody wants to eat a donut, they're gonna. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but they're gonna eat it.
Yes.
What I do is help people not want it anymore.
That is, I think that you're right there. Because I take myself, for example, even though I'm very fit and very healthy and everything, I try and do it as best I can. But if I want something, if I want to eat that food, there's nothing stopping me. I might reduce the portion size of what I might take in, but I will still go ahead and have it. So I think what you've said there is very consistent. But what would be the motivation for people to sign up? If I know you said some of the one of the willpower is the shift in the dynamics, but what other motivation would you say to keep people on there? Because I think you're very right here, and this is where my struggle with diet is. And I mean, I've never dieted in my life because I just don't know how to or where to even start with it. But I see friends, they start today, they stop tomorrow, and these people are, well, it's what would get that motivation going? What is your motivation behind this?
Well, I think, you know, one of the things that we work on is understanding that the first thing is you will never have a WildFit client out there going, you got to do WildFit, you got to do WildFit, unless you ask. And that's because we've created a culture where we've told our clients that the best way to help their relatives, their friends, their coworkers is not by being preachy, but rather by living by example. And so we've grown tremendously well on word of mouth, even though we ask our clients to not be so, you know, out there about it, because we don't want to be pushing. We want to be attracting. Mm-hmm. So even when you ask me, like, what would you say to somebody? I'd be like, well, I wouldn't unless they asked me. And then what I would do is I would find out, like, what is the difficulty for them. You know, some people, they want to lose some weight. Okay, we can talk about that. Some people are worried about their sex drive and they want it to come back. And I'll tell you what, the number one way to kill your sex drive is to have a bad relationship with food, because then your body's like, well, we don't want you making babies. Like if the minute you fix your relationship with food, you'd be amazed at the transformation that men and women go through. Some people want greater mental clarity. Some people, oh, you know what? Here's another one. Some people don't want to get tired at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They just don't want that. I'm out of energy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They don't want that. Some people want the energy to play with their children or their grandchildren. And here's a really big one. A lot of people live with really terrible emotional experiences around food. For example, they see something that they're tempted by, and they really, 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 really want to have it, but they use their willpower, and they live with regret, and they live in pain not having that food that they really want. If somebody's ever having that experience, we can help them. But then there's the other version of the person who eats the food and then has all this pain that they're weak and that they were bad and that they shame and they have guilt. Well, we can help them as well. And then what we want to do is create for people what we call food freedom, which is where they truly can eat whatever they want, whenever they want, and feel good about it, but also not eat that which they wouldn't wish to eat and have no sense of regret or missing out about it. That's food freedom.
Eric, I've heard so much of this phrase of you are what you eat. What are some of the damages the modern diet does to the human body?
Well, I mean, it's not, and let's just back. It's not even that you are what you eat. It's you are what you eat, and you're also what you are what you eats. And so, these days, if you're eating, plants that are covered in, weird pesticides and what have you, or you're eating animals that are being injected with, hormones or being fed like grains to fatten them up, then you're actually picking up even what they're eating. And so what we really want to do is, first of all, one of our principles at WildFit is that your health is more dependent upon you getting enough of the good stuff than you eliminating the bad stuff. All these diets are out there, eliminate these 7 dangerous foods and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we should look at that. We should consider a better relationship with foods that are non-functional. But more important than that is getting enough of the good stuff in. And my favorite way of describing that, Anne, it's like this. If we took you and we put you in an experiment where you ate everything perfect, and nothing bad. You ate no toxins, no preservatives, it was all good. And you ate everything perfect. But we went in with some magical scientific process and removed the vitamin C from any citrus you were eating, from any liver you were eating. We removed the vitamin C from all the sources that you would get it from. And you're now eating all the right stuff, but no vitamin C. You would still get an infection that would turn into scurvy that would then kill you. You would die. And you would die never having smoked a cigarette, never having drunk too much alcohol, never having ice cream, never eating sugar, never eating any of the bad, dangerous things, because you're missing that which you need. So the first thing we should always be looking at is, what are our human needs? What do we need nutritionally? And we should be getting those needs met as best we can. Then, now to answer your question, of course, there are problems with certain things that we eat. And it's not only, look, let's talk about sugar. Everybody's against sugar. Sugar's bad, sugar's bad, sugar's bad. Well, let me put it another way. Is sugar good or bad? Yes, it's good or bad. There are bad sugars and there are good sugars. And then there's bad ways to eat good sugars. So for our ancestors, one of the reasons that many of us have such strong cravings for sweet things is that our ancestors were absolutely dependent upon seasonal fruits to get them through the fall, to fatten them up for the winter that was coming. And honey, they were meant to have access to these sweet carbohydrate foods that served a purpose. But Mother Nature would eventually take them away. Mother Nature would take them away, and they'd be like, okay, it's out of season now. And the problem now is that, well, frankly, Waitrose doesn't take them away. Safeway doesn't take it away. They leave it there year round. And so now you can take something that's even not that bad, really, but it was never meant to be eaten year round. And now you put your pancreas in a tough situation. The pancreas was designed by God or evolution, whatever your beliefs are. The pancreas was designed as a multi-purpose organ, and 2 of its jobs are diametrically opposite of each other. One is to produce insulin to help you manage your sugar, and the other one is to help you produce glucagon to help you burn your fat. It can't do both of those jobs at the same time. And if you don't let it do both jobs, guess what? It's going to get pissed off. It's going to get angry. And so what we want to do is make sure that it's not just that we're eating the right stuff and that we're avoiding the not right stuff. It's also that we're understanding that there is supposed to be a natural seasonality to our nutritional structure.
And I think the modern world has almost kind of destroyed that, and people not realizing, you are what you eat, but I love it. You are what you eat. And that is something I would definitely be spreading that word around. I've always thought about going veggie, because everyone says it's so healthy for you. If you're a vegetarian, you'd be healthy, you have so much energy. I'm thinking, okay, if I go vegetarian, what do I really eat? What does that consist in? And would I still be healthy? I have to ask you, do we have to go veggie to be healthy? Or is there a conscious way to eat and still be healthy?
Let's really talk about this.
Yeah.
You can't go pure vegetarian and be healthy. And I know this is a controversial statement, and now a bunch of vegans are going to jump on your threads and yell at me and all this kind of stuff. So I want to talk about this and I want to lay it out. But by the way, many of our clients are vegan and vegetarian. We support them through that. We support their decision in that. I'm not against it, but we support it intelligently. And that is to say that human beings evolved as omnivores. We have had a long, long history of hunting and gathering. And so for any human to come along today and say, I choose to ignore one of the most important nutritional macros is dangerous unless they take steps to mitigate those dangers. Even in America, the Vegetarian Society, right on their website says, if you're going to make the decision to be vegetarian, you better get supplements because you're missing a bunch of very important things. So no, you don't have to go veggie to be healthy. And by the way, consider that the way you even ask that question implies that going veggie even is healthy, right? Like, do I have to go veggie to be healthy? No, and going veggie unwisely is unhealthy. So what we want to do is examine if we really want to look, and if you got yourself an exotic pet, how would you know what to feed the pet? Would you go to the Harvard, university website and read their medical studies? Would you go to the NIH in America? Would you go to the NHS in the UK and ask them for their nutritional guidelines for your? No, you would go to the Big Cat Diaries and you would watch a special about that animal, and you would now know what to feed it. You would know what to. You don't need somebody to break it down scientifically. You just look at their behavior. And what I would say to you is that we're very much able to do the same thing with humans, both in terms of our very well-established archaeological history and in terms of the present-day African hunter-gatherer tribes that live. I don't want to over-romanticize it. I'm not saying they live the way our ancestors did, but I think we can all agree that they live the closest representation to our ancestors' lives of anything we have on Earth today. And it just so happens that the way they live and the archaeological record support each other. So no, you don't have to go veggie to be healthy. What you need to do, in my opinion, is make sure that you are eating the things that your body needs, and getting the vitamins. That what are there? I think 13 essential vitamins, 16 minerals, all the 20 amino acids. I mean, okay, 9 of them you need to eat. The other ones you can make. The healthy fats, arguably some fiber from time to time. Like those are the things you need, and we know where they come from historically for us. They come from meat, fish, and eggs, and not the sirloin cut off the back. It's like, it's our ancestors ate the whole animal. They ate liver, they ate heart. I don't happen to like those things, but I know that they're nutritionally incredibly important. And then of course, seasonally available fruits and vegetables have also historically been a big part of our history. Nothing else, maybe some nuts and seeds here or there, but certainly not processed food, certainly not GMO foods, certainly not, that sort of stuff.
Oh, Eric, that's brilliant. Thank you for answering that, because it's just for my own personal reason and my health reason. Most of my followers all have chronic illness. Some of them have chronic illness, and they would love to know this. They will always ask me this question: now, without chronic illness, can we do this? I don't like to say yes or no because I don't know the answer. But listen to that and see if this helps you. Another thing about, and there's something I love what you say about what are the 8 things our body truly needs to be healthy. And I started answering it. I said, I'll answer this question for Eric. I said, I'll give him just one. And I said, water. I'm not sure if I got that right, but what are the 8 things our body truly needs to be healthy?
To me, what it really means is feeling good and having energy.
Yeah.
It means feeling good and having energy. You can say it's the absence of disease and the absence of pain and the absence of this and that, but what it really is feeling good and having energy. And life is just more worth living that way. The number of people who are willingly suffering through consequences of their diet. But the problem is that when I say willingly, that's not entirely fair, because most of them don't even realize that such a significant part of their challenges come from their diet. listen, and I'm a huge fan of doctors. I really am. Doctors have saved my life many times. I can think of 3 times that they literally saved my life. I was in Africa in February of this year and had an emergency appendectomy in a field hospital in Tanzania. The doctor saved my life. I was burned alive at 15 years old, at 18 years old. I nearly lost my arm and had to have, skin grafts and what have you. The doctors, the EMTs and the doctor, they saved my life. I'm a huge fan of doctors. I'm not such a fan of the institutions that educate them. And I'm not such a fan of the institutions that continue to educate them after their education. And so here's an example. And if somebody walks into the office and they've got, say, cancer, then this is the way the doctor tells them, something like this. I'm sorry to tell you that you've got cancer and we can start aggressive treatment immediately, but your odds are like this and you've got about this long to live and we're going to do everything we can to fight for you. And, it's like the scariest announcement in the entire world. When somebody has diabetes, which is every bit as dangerous as cancer. In fact, many times cancer is a side effect of diabetic condition, right? So when somebody has diabetes, now there are some doctors that are clearly getting better about this, but they do it differently. They go like this. Yes, I've seen the blood numbers. It's not right. You're diabetic. Here's the way it's going to work. You're going to need to use this device to measure your blood sugar, and then you're going to take insulin and maybe some metformin, and you're going to have to do this for the rest of your life. Good luck. And that's it. That's the conversation they have. When they should be having this conversation, they should be saying, I'm looking at your numbers right now, and you are headed toward diabetes. You are now what they call pre-diabetes. You should be taking this as a warning. There are some things that you can do right now that can turn this around within a month. You can turn this around in 6 weeks. And if you don't turn it around, I'm going to have to prescribe medication for you that will become chronic subscription medication for the rest of your life, which will not prevent you from losing your eyesight. It will not prevent you from having your leg or hand amputated. It will not prevent you from dying young and suffering for many years and causing your family a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. So please change your lifestyle. They don't say that. They don't say that. And the jaded version of me says they don't say that because it's not very profitable to say that. But I don't think there's any doctor out there that's making that decision based on profitability. I don't think so. I think that there are pharmaceutical companies that are educating the doctors that are worried about profitability, their shareholders or what have you. But I don't think there's a single doctor, which means that either the doctors are being influenced by the pharmaceutical industry or they're simply ignorant. They simply don't know that diabetes can be turned around. And so when you say that what's the damage that people can do with their food? Well, there's one. Mess up your sugar sensitivity, mess up the operation of your pancreas, and mess up your quality of life in the most dramatic way.
Oh, that is very spot on. I like that. Before I get to my final question, how can we protect in UK? I know where you are, it's lovely weather, but in the UK, we're going into the very cold winter season. The biggest problem we tend to have is flu because people associate flu to our immune system not being good enough. What can we do to protect our immune system as we go into the cold days of winter?
Sure. So let me disclaim, I'm not an immunologist, not a doctor, just a guy. But I am a guy who has received countless letters from people who have talked about completely turning their health around. And in fact, I've even had people write to me and tell me they're pretty damn certain that they would have died of COVID if they didn't make the changes they made 2 years ago when they did WildFit. So I want to qualify my advice as anecdotal at very best, not medical advice, just my ideas. But here's my rudimentary understanding of the way my way of describing the way the immune system works is that you, in effect, have 2 levels of your immune system. You have your innate immune system, which protects you from injury. And for example, if you cut yourself, it's what helps like you coagulate your blood and fight the infection and, kind of keep you safe. And that's what causes bruising to try and, heal the area. You have your innate immune system. And then you have your acquired immune system, which is where if your innate immune system has failed and a pathogen gets through the innate immune system, now the acquired immune system says, oh, wow, we better develop antibodies to protect against this particular virus or bacteria. Okay. So now the next thing is to recognize that before we talk about how to strengthen immunity, before we talk about how to be more robust, let's talk about how not to damage it. Well, obviously we're going to say, don't put a lot of garbage in, don't smoke, don't do stuff that's going to damage your body, because your immune system now gets tasked with making all those repairs and barely has time to defend you anymore. But there's another even more serious consideration, and that has to do with our lives today. The way we approach life today is that life is very difficult and it's full of stress, which is rubbish. Life is the easiest it's ever been in the history of ever. We have the lowest levels of poverty, according to the UN. We have the lowest levels of poverty that we've ever had, ever in the history of Earth. The highest level of women, of girls graduating from school ever in the history of ever. We are in the best times in the history of Earth, but we don't know this because the press only runs articles from the scary edges of the bell curve. So most of us think the world is headed into the shitter. And the problem with that is that most people are living with the press as their largest educational influence. And as a consequence, they're living with stress chemicals. They're living with noradrenaline, adrenaline, cortisol, flooding them all the time. Now, here's the trouble. Those chemicals are designed to prepare you for danger. So, Anne, imagine you and me walking along in the bush in Africa, and all of a sudden we see a couple of lions. And this has physically happened to me a number of times in my life. A couple of years ago, I walked down into a river gully and there were 14 lions sitting in the dry riverbed, not, maybe 30 meters away from me. And I can tell you, your immune system kicks in. You start pounding in the chest. That's adrenaline, noradrenaline. You start producing the cortisol, thickening up your blood, getting you ready for battle. But at the same time that it does that, it lowers your shields. Because as long as your immune system is dealing with the immediate danger, it tasks all the energy to the immediate survival of the immediate situation, and it's not concerned with bacteria and viruses in that moment. Now, that was all fine and good back then, because the minute the lion situation was handled, you flush the cortisol out of your system, you move on with your life, and you resume normal immune function. But most people today sit down and watch The Walking Freaking Dead and freak themselves out. They watch Ozarks, they watch Breaking Bad, and they create all this stress in them, and they're sitting there on their couch with all this stress, which means their innate immune system is on hold, which makes them susceptible to sickness. So one of the worst things in the world that you could possibly do is take a population and tell them they have to stay inside, away from the sun, and watch Netflix and not have social contact and lower their immune system in the meantime. Problem. So first, we don't want to weaken the immune system. We don't want to stress ourselves out, and we shouldn't. And by the way, in case I just want to give you one example. This actually comes from Sapiens. It's such a good example, but just consider that up to about 150 years ago, if you were thinking of signing up to be in the military and they found out you were a carpenter, you might think they would send you through to the engineering corps, where you could build bridges, or you could be involved in structure and that kind of stuff. But the truth was, if you were a carpenter, it was actually much more likely that they sent you to the medical corps, because at that stage, if you injured your arm or your leg, they didn't have antibiotics and they were terrified of gangrene, and so they simply cut them off. That's just how it was. It was the most common thing to happen in war for hundreds of years. Slightest injury over here, cut it off, because you're going to die. And if that's not enough to show you the difference between life today and just 150, 200 years ago, consider that they also didn't have anesthetic. And we think we're stressing out that life is so tough and hard for us today. No, we live in the best times in the history of ever, and we just need to be reminded of that from time to time. That said, what can we do to strengthen ourselves? Well, one way to look at it is that your body has some very core needs. And if you don't satisfy those needs, you weaken yourself. So one of the needs, is air. And that means good quality air, and it means good breathing. It means not this shallow fear breathing that most of us are doing all the time, but it means good, solid diaphragmatic breathing that you might do during a yoga class or at the gym or in a great meditation. Thing number one. Thing number two, you got to have hydration. And you can't drink to solve dehydration. You have to drink to prevent it. Once you're dehydrated, it's too late. So you don't drink for today. You drink for, if it's Monday, you're drinking for Wednesday or Thursday. So you should be preemptively staying hydrated as best you can all the time. The way to think of it in a sense is that your fat cells are like big water bottles. And anytime you have a chance to top up those water bottles, you want to top them up just in case there's no water where you're going. So you want to stay preemptively hydrated. Then you got to have sunlight. You got to have sunlight. Now, sadly, you live in the United Kingdom of shade. And so sunlight's not the easiest thing in the world for you to get, but luckily you have Spain. Are you guys still allowed to go to Spain? Sorry, just a little joke.
Yes, we're still allowed to.
You're still allowed to go. But the point is that you have Spain and you have France and you have that. But But I will tell you, I lived in the UK for 10 years or 9 years, and almost, except for the first 3 years, I owned a convertible every year that I was there. And the reason I did is because when the sun comes out on that third Thursday every 2 years in the summer, I would put the roof down. And of course, I'm exaggerating, but what it meant is that I would very frequently be driving to meetings. I put the roof down to make sure I got enough sun, because you've got to have it. And by the way, you come from Africa, so do I, but you genetically come from Africa a little more recently than me. Your skin's darker. That means that a country like the UK is, a country like the UK is as dangerous to you for lack of sun as a Norwegian going to Nigeria burning in the sun, right? It's very important that you get appropriate levels of sun, because otherwise you're talking vitamin D deficiency and rickets and what have you.
All the time.
Okay.
All the time.
Then very quickly, healthy metabolism. It's very important that your body becomes functionally able to burn sugar, fat, and protein. Most people only ever burn sugar. I don't want to talk a lot more about that because it's a very big conversation, but it's important that you have healthy metabolism. Okay. Then healthy nutrition. Your needs need to be met. The essential vitamins, minerals, essential amino acids, fats, these things have to be taken in. And then last two, movement. Movement is unbelievably key. I could talk about that for an hour. In fact, we just launched our Wilder Body program, and we're talking to people about movement like crazy, but I'm just going to give you one fact about movement. And that is that your lymphatic system, which is tasked with cleansing your entire body from the inside, it's like a million little Roomba robots that are moving around in your body, cleaning you. They don't actually have a pump. And the only thing that makes them clean your body is muscular contraction. If you don't if you don't move around, you don't pump lymph around your system. If you go to a hospital and you see somebody who's on bed care, watch the doctor or the nurse actually will walk in and move them, move them, because you've got to move that around. And then the last one, and it's just as important as all of them, and that is physical contact. You need to be touched by other human beings. Hugs and back scratching and cuddling and sex and all those things that connect us with each other are incredibly important to our immune response and our mental health, which of course has a huge impact on our immunity.
You know, things like this, things we take for granted, but I'm really glad you shared that with us. On the final question, because I know I've taken so much of your time, I saw your message on Twitter and I love that. You said treating symptoms is short-sighted and dangerous if we don't always treat the cause. The pain is trying to tell you something. If you numb the pain without addressing the cause, you are heading for trouble. The COVID-19 pandemic is a symptom of a much bigger problem. And I said to myself, what is this? Is a beautiful thing. I mean, it talks about pain, it talks about everything I love to hear. And I saw the COVID-19 pandemic is a symptom of a much bigger problem. I wanted to know, before I let go of you, could you describe what you really meant in that tweet? Because it's not long ago you wrote that message.
Yeah. So in February of 2020, I saw what was coming, and most of the people around me thought that I was an alarmist. It's not going to be that bad. It's going to be like the bird flu. And I'm like, nope. I started canceling seminars. I was like, I knew it was going to be a world event. And I was telling anybody who would listen, it's going to be 3 years. It's going to be at least 3 years. And I also, in March of that year, I released a video online with my publisher, Mindvalley. And in that video, I said, listen, whatever precautions you take, PPE, social distancing, all that kind of stuff, fine. Do all of that, of course. But also, you need to take care of your nutrition and your health at this time, because a lot of people are going to the grocery stores and buying up every bit of junk food that they can and going home because they believed the government when the government said 2 weeks to flatten the curve. They believed that. I did not believe that. And the problem was that most people were going to the grocery store and going, well, it's just 2 weeks. We can eat frozen pizza and ice cream for 2 weeks and it won't be a problem. But they didn't realize it was going to be months. The average American gained 76% of Americans, not even average, 76% of Americans in the first 4 months of the pandemic gained 15 pounds or 1 stone. In normal times, human beings gain in the developed world, they gain about 3 pounds per year, which is already creating an obesity pandemic. Now, suddenly 76% of Americans gained a stone in 4 months. Tell me that's not going to come back and bite us badly in terms of obesity costs and diabetes costs and what have you. It's terrible. And so I released a video at that point that said, listen, your immune system is your last line of defense. Wear your mask, wash your hands, do whatever you want. Do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, that stuff is not infallible. And if the virus gets to you, you need your immune system operating optimally. Now, I published that video and it was medium viral, you know, a few million views, whatever. And then the trolls jumped on and they're like, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not how viruses work. It's completely random. You know, if there's 50 people in the room and the virus kills 10%, it just randomly kills 10%. It's not like that. I couldn't believe some of the rubbish people were writing to me. And some of them had letters after their names. Like, I couldn't believe what they were writing to me. Who knows these days on social media if the letters are real or just they're rubbish letters. But here's the thing. Over the month and a half after that video, data started coming out of China and Italy. And the data started showing us even then that obesity and diabetes and inflammation and autoimmune disease, that these things were having a huge influence. In fact, we were looking at apparently at that stage, as much as 70% of COVID mortality coexisted with 3 other diseases at the same time, and 90% with 2 other diseases. In other words, it's very difficult to die of COVID if you are not already sick. It's very difficult to die of COVID if you're not already sick. Now, I know some people watch the BBC and they watch CNN and they're going to go and they go, I saw a story on the news the other day about young, healthy people dying of COVID. Listen, I recognize that there are some anomalies at the very edge of the bell curve, but what I also recognize is that CNN and the BBC, even though the BBC is not funded by advertising directly, except that they are in international BBC, they are not. They report from the very edges of the bell curve because that's the sensational news. So I saw an article on CNN that says, mother of 6-year-old COVID victims speaks out to other mothers of 6-year-olds. And I'm like, holy shit, a 6-year-old died of COVID? I'm scared now. I go in and read the article. It's really scary. But then I decided to check the name and find other sources and look at the other, really dive in. You know, most people only read the headline. I read the story and then I go further than the story. And you know what I found is it was a 6-year-old child that had a terminal disease that was going to die that year anyway, and happened also to get COVID. And they're reporting it that way to frighten us all. Now, listen, I'm not saying COVID isn't a serious thing. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that if you are fundamentally healthy, contracting COVID is safer than commuting to work for a year. And so being healthy is the ultimate defense. And it can be done rapidly. Type 2 diabetes can be turned around in 6 or 8 weeks. Obesity, depending on the severity of it, can be recovered very quickly. And here's the real thing. My tweet that you mentioned applies both individually and globally. And what I mean by that is that an individual person who simply thinks they can go out and get themselves a vaccine and now they're safe, don't lie to yourself. First of all, the vaccine will only work properly if you're healthy. And secondly, if you're unhealthy, the vaccine will not work all that well anyway. So whether you want to get vaccinated or not, that's a whole other conversation. We could do a whole podcast on that conversation alone. Yeah. We don't have to go into that debate, but what we can agree is that whether or not you want to vaccinate or whether or not you've been vaccinated, being healthy is important today, more so than ever before. But here's where it's really dangerous. And this is where I am deeply disappointed in Boris Johnson. I really, for a moment, thought that he was going to grasp this opportunity to do something proper for healthcare when he said that he was going to tackle obesity and what have you. I really thought he was going to do it. And he's just given into the industry like everybody else has done. And here's what I want to say is if they had 30 years ago changed what's going on around the recommendations around sugar and seed oils, if they just made those 2 changes, then we wouldn't have the current obesity and diabetes pandemics that we have going on right now. And if we did not have the prolific levels of diabetes happening in our population at the moment, then COVID-19 wouldn't have been able to gain purchase in the population. Yes. It wouldn't have been able to gain purchase. It required sick people to spread. And I'm not blaming the people, by the way, not at all. I am very clear that the food industry is as bad, as evil and manipulative as the tobacco industry ever was. And if somebody is listening to this podcast and you're overweight and you think I'm fat shaming you, I am not. You should be talking to a lawyer. And seriously, the lawsuits against the food industry should begin, and they are. So I'm saying that tweet says that if we simply think we can solve this pandemic with a vaccine, then yeah, we can do some good maybe. But what's that going to do for the next one? Nothing. No. Whereas turning the population's health around it's going to help with this one and the next one.
Eric, I really appreciate this because I mean, myself with a chronic illness, I understand this being, solving the problem, we need to absolutely get to the root cause of the problem. It doesn't matter what the problem is, but once we address the root cause of the problem, it makes it a lot better. And I know how busy you are, and I really wish I could get you again, because I thoroughly enjoyed this. I enjoyed talking to you. I enjoyed learning about the immune system. And I think specific that clip about immunity is, I'll be sharing that out firstly, because we're going into winter and a lot of people will be asking questions, and I'll share the other stories bit by bit. Thank you so much for your time.
And let me share one more thing for you. Let me share one more thing that you might like. And that is, it's kind of a little bit of a joke, but here's the deal. In case anybody would like to miss 2 or 3 weeks of work or school in January, I can show you how to get the flu. I can show you how to do it. So this is the way you do it. Now it's September, right? Or it's October. It's October. So what that's very important is, here we are in October. It's very important that you, in October, that you go to some Halloween parties and eat lots of Halloween candy. It's very important. And eat Halloween candy and go to Halloween parties and drink a lot of alcohol and have a lot of fun. Right now, once you've done that, you're going to move into November. Now, you guys are in the UK, so you don't have Thanksgiving, but I'm going to say take it on. Take on Thanksgiving and have at least one big Thanksgiving meal where you eat so much food that it makes you sleepy, that you eat so much food that it makes you sleepy, and you're left with leftovers. So you're stuffing yourself for food for another week after that. Then that'll get you toward Christmas. And then the Christmas season will begin. By the way, and we all know the Christmas season doesn't wait for December. Christmas cake and stuff like that will start showing up in mid-November. Yeah. So you can start eating some Christmas candy, and you got to have your Christmas cake. You got to go to Christmas parties. You got to make sure you drink and have fun. You got to eat and just this one time, I'm going to eat the junk. Eat it all through December. Have great big Christmas meals. Then on New Year's Eve, I want you to go to the best ever New Year's Eve party, get totally drunk, and wonder why it is that your immune system is so suppressed that you end up with the flu season starting in January. That's just, if you want the flu, that's how to do it.
Not how to. And that is so true. So in simple short, what you're telling us, if we do not want the flu, eat better. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.